Documentary filmmaker Ken Burns has been capturing the past for nearly 50 years and chronicling some of the most significant events in American history, from the Civil War to the origins of baseball. He's been hailed as one of the most influential documentary filmmakers of all time, picking up multiple Emmys, Grammys, and Oscar nominations. As America approaches its 250th birthday, Burns turned his attention toward the American Revolution in his latest series, telling the stories of the men and women who built America through sacrifice and struggle.
America is predicated on an idea that tells us who we are, where we came from, and what our forebears were willing to die for.
Collins said no taxation without representation. The fear was, if we give in to this precedent, what will they do in the future?
I sat down with Burns for a meet-the-moment conversation about what history can teach us about overcoming our differences today. Why was now the right moment to retell the story of the American Revolution?
It's such a wonderful and fortuitous accident. The Now started 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, when we were finishing up our series on the Vietnam War, and I was looking at a map of the Central Highlands, and I thought, maybe this could be the British moving west on Long Island towards Brooklyn. Maybe we can do, despite the absence of photographs and newsreels, maybe we can do the revolution. So I spoke up and I said, we're doing the revolution next. No idea that it would come falling close to 250, come at a place where Americans are so anxious about the future. Will there be another 250 or another 10 years, you know? And I think that that kind of existential, fraught moment gives us an opportunity to allow the story of the American Revolution, the complicated story of the American Revolution, to help us understand. History is our best teacher, and it can be a helpful guide for everybody, no matter your disposition, political orientation, age, whatever it is. History can be an incredibly important way to digest the present and then figure out what your response is and to imagine a future together.
One of the aspects of the American Revolution that you capture so powerfully that you're referencing in this documentary is the fact that a lot of people think of the American Revolution in glossy terms.
Yes.
The founding fathers in Philadelphia crafting the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. But this documentary makes the point that this was a bloody, years-long battle that claimed so many lives and that frankly impacted every single person on this territory.
It's so pervasive, and I think we have sanitized the war, and I think it's out of an understandable fear that if somehow we reveal how dark and bloody it is, that it will somehow diminish those big ideas in Philadelphia in '76 and then 11 years later in '87 when they do the Constitution. It doesn't. Those ideas are made even more impressive because of the improbability of the struggle, the odds against success, the time it took to do it, all of the problems, the winters at Valley Forge and Morristown in which people are dying of disease. This coincides with a continent-wide pandemic or pandemics, and one of the big arguments of the time is whether you inoculate the troops. There's a failed invasion of Canada, our desire to make it the 14th state. I mean, the rhymes to this moment are so particularly helpful because I think we can, as we Chicken Little say the sky is falling, you know, everything is bad, we're so divided. We're really divided, but we're way more divided then, way more divided during the Civil War, way more divided during the Vietnam period. And so I see that division as sort of a mile wide but an inch thick, and it takes good story to remind people of the thing that we share in common.
And in watching this documentary, I kept thinking to myself that one of the takeaways, one of the points that you make is the power of this country's democracy and its fragility at the same time.
It's really true, and I've found that in film after film after film. You know, we made a film a few years ago called The U.S. and the Holocaust, and you realize that if you wanted to be in the most cosmopolitan place on earth where everything in architecture and cinema and painting and music and thinking was going on, Berlin in 1932 would be the best place. And the next January, not so much. And so you see how quickly the veneer of civilization can be pierced, and that and the founders understood that. They were really trying to reverse engineer all sorts of things. You know, they put as Article 1, not the executive, that's Article 2. The executive's the manager who carries out the wishes of the Congress. So I think if the founders came here, they would not be surprised at all that somebody was seeking more authoritarian power. They would be abjectly disappointed that Article 1, the legislative branch, had abdicated so much of the power, because that's what they thought would be the bulwark against the inevitable thing. Remember, on July 4, 1776, most people had been through time's subjects, and we were creating a new thing called citizen, and it had a lot of responsibilities entailed with it.
I want to talk to you a little bit about you personally, how you became Ken Burns. You talk about the fact that the passing of your mother was deeply devastating to you, and that it was deeply impactful. Talk a little bit about your mom, losing her, and how that created who you are today.
My mom got cancer when I was 3 or 4, and there was never a moment growing up where we didn't have this horrific impending tragedy about to happen. And I was even told when I was in 2nd grade, 7 years old, that she was going to die in 6 months. But she lived almost to my 12th birthday, just a few months. So I got through the 6th grade, or just almost through the 6th grade, and she died. And my father would have the strict curfew, but he would let me stay up at night and watch movies with him. And I saw him cry for the first time at a movie. And he hadn't cried when my mom was sick or when she died. And I noticed it, and friends had noticed it. And then here was this emotional safe haven. So I know in 1965, I was now 12, I wanted to be a filmmaker. And that meant Alfred Hitchcock or John Ford or whatever. And I went to Hampshire College in Amherst, Massachusetts, which was brand new and experimenting. I came the 2nd year, and all the teachers were social documentary still photographers and filmmakers, reminding me that there is as much drama in what is and what was as anything that the human imagination dreams of. And by the time I was working on my final project there in 74 and 75, I was doing a history film. And I've done it ever since. Later on in a crisis, my late father-in-law, who was a psychologist, I told him I seemed to be keeping my mother alive. And he said, "I bet you blew out your candles wishing she'd come back." And I said, "How did you know that?" And he said, "Look what you do for a living. You wake the dead. You make Abraham Lincoln come alive. Who do you think you're really trying to wake up?" And so you realize that grief is this incredibly devastating force in our lives, but it also is a propellant. And sometimes most of us, as much as we want to order our lives and have the metaphorical gated community against everything and try to solve for any kind of free electron, we're really actually made often by the tragedies that we suffer. And that I wouldn't be talking to you if my mother hadn't died. And that's part of the tragedy and loss of it, and it's also part of what makes us as human beings able to overcome these things and to say, not in a conscious way, but I have, in retrospect, been able to put the grief into the service of communicating to myself, my colleagues, and most importantly to my fellow citizens, the glories of our story in all their complication.
So powerful to hear from him about that. My huge thanks to Ken Burns for a truly incredible conversation. And you can watch my full interview with him at meetthepress.com.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.